but it's fine. I see a glare in my glasses. That's okay. It's not.
It's okay. You look great, Chef. Hey,
Thank you.
everyone. You do. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Food Talk Live. A reminder that this episode will also appear on our podcast, Food Talk with Danny Nierenberg. So please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts. This really helps amplify the voices of all the great folks we're interviewing who are trying to fix the food system and in a lot of different ways. Before I introduce Chef Pierre Thiam, I want to riff a little bit about agrobiodiversity in the food system. This is something that's really close to my heart. The importance of diverse food systems, eating the rainbow, and really having a focus on indigenous and traditional foods. These in so many ways are the foods of the future. They're resilient to drought and pests and disease. They're nutritious. They're delicious. One of the things that I've been working on over the last year and a half is an agrobiodiversity accelerator with partners at the Google Food Lab. And we have a new series that we're releasing weekly, a 6-part series on our podcast called Bringing Agrobiodiversity to Your Dinner Table. And we publish it on the weekends. It's with our partners at the Lexicon of Sustainability, the Food Agrobiodiversity Clarity and Transparency Roundtable, and the Green, Brown, Blue Network. So I encourage you on the weekends when you're gardening or when you're on your treadmill or if you're running errands safely, I hope, with your mask, that you listen to that series. It's a lot of great interviewees from all over the world, and we were really honored to work with the Lexicon of Sustainability to make that possible. So today I get to talk to Chef Pierre Thiam. He is a James Beard Award nominated chef, author, and social activist who brings West African cuisine to the global fine dining world. He leads restaurants in his native Senegal, and I was just telling him how Dakar is one of my favorite places in the world, as well as in Nigeria and New York. And he runs Yolele Foods, which supports smallholder farmers in Africa by helping them sell grains like fonio to the world market. Chef, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me, Danielle. I've been looking forward to joining you, and I love what you're doing. I love what Food Tank is about, and really, I see lots of synergy with our work. So,
Thanks so
absolutely a pleasure.
much. Thanks so much. We're your biggest fans. And, one of the highlights of last year for me was meeting you in person at an event at Google. And where I got to taste your food, and it's amazing. So I wanted to start off. You've been cooking for nearly 30 years, and cuisine, especially in the United States, has changed so dramatically since 30 years ago. And I think folks probably didn't even know what West African cuisine was or looked like. And so can you talk about the sort of growing interest in West African food and exposing, a whole new generation of eaters to the flavors and tastes of where you grew up?
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like I'm very well positioned to talk about it because 30 years ago, indeed, when I really started cooking in New York City, New York City was being called the food capital of the world already.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that was such that was West Africa was picture. We had a couple of restaurants at the time in Harlem community, but I knew that we had so much to bring to this table. It was like the flavors, the spices. I mean, everything was just missing. And that's really what made me decide to focus on bringing this kind of cuisine. And I saw how gradually different cuisines were entering the New York horizon. At the time when I arrived, late 80s, it was mostly Chinese, Indian, of course,
Mm-hmm.
French, Italian. And then gradually the Thai came, and then the Japanese came, and then Mexicans, and that was just the progression. And to me, I was so excited because I knew West Africa was going to come. And West Africa made so much sense because it was already present, considering the past history between America and West Africa, particularly. In addition, there are many more ingredients. Ingredient timely, ingredients, nutritious ingredients. West African cuisine itself, if you look at the nutritional aspect, is one of the most balanced cuisine out there. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's like use of greens, no celebration, and the food culture itself was so rich. So yes, I was definitely excited to see this progression in New York City.
Yeah, it's really exciting how West African food has found a home, not just in New York, but in other places in the world, and how you're exposing folks. You said you brought up the this issue of this well balanced diet, lots of fruits, lots of nutritious grains, lots of vegetables, lots of really delicious flavors and textures and spices that I think really make Senegalese cooking really wonderful and unique. Can you tell us a little bit about why you decided to really focus on fonio?
Well, fonio is a grain that for me was there were so many reasons. You know, one is the fact that that's a grain I would only eat during the time when, as a kid, I would go to visit my grandparents in the south
Mm-hmm.
of Senegal. I grew up in Dakar. As you know, Dakar is like this really hip city of Africa. And like many of them, you don't have access to certain ingredients like fonio. We unfortunately tend to look at these grains as like country people grains.
Right.
And Dakar is a city that's very French in many aspects. You can have like baguettes, you can have croissants in every street corner, which is made out of wheat, and that wheat we import it. We don't grow wheat, but we
Mm-hmm.
value those things that are imported, and we look down at the things that we have, even though those things that we have are so much more nutritious in many ways, and also great for us because it supports our agriculture, our local agriculture. So those are the reasons why I wanted to bring fonio to the forefront, because I needed to, first of all, bring back this sense of pride in our communities. Let's support our own grains.
Right.
In addition to that, the fact that fonio has so much going for it. That's a grain that's resilient. That's one of the oldest grain, if not the oldest cultivated grain in Africa. It's been cultivated for 5,000 years.
Wow.
It grows in poor soil. It grows in sandy soil. It's one of the fastest maturing grain. It can mature in 2 months. You can have fonio maturing in 2 months, and for that, it's very important for the farmers that grow it, because they know they can rely on fonio when there's nothing else in the
Right.
barns. That's like they call it the hungry rice. For sometimes it's nicknamed hungry rice because of that, and the fact that it's nutritious, it's gluten free, it's nutritious. So I thought, um, I could, by introducing fonio to new markets, since I live in New York and I had access to, through my restaurant and through my network of chefs, I could probably naively thinking I could introduce fonio to at least that segment of the food service industry and satisfy a demand, because the consumers are more and more conscious, and there's a demand for ancient grains, gluten-free, that are good for the environment. That's really all the reasons why I wanted to do that: introduce new markets and open opportunities for the farmers who are growing fonio, who have no markets, no access to markets, and they have
Right.
this amazing grain. So that's really the reason why I did it.
Absolutely, and it is delicious. I can attest to that. It's really
Thank you.
wonderful. I've had it in Dakar. I've had it from you. It's just a delicious grain, and again, so resilient and fast growing, as you said. It just provides all of these things you want from a crop. It's nutrient dense, delicious. Easy to grow. But you brought up, I think, a really important point that this is a grain that people look down upon, right? They look down upon it as poor people's food, or country food, as you mentioned, and it really disappeared from a lot of Senegalese diets
Hmm.
because of a focus on wheat and other crops. How besides your restaurant and besides creating so much awareness, how can we restore sort of that interest in not just folks in the United States eating fonio because it's delicious, but making sure that Senegalese folks and people in sub-Saharan Africa also have access to and the opportunity to, derive the joy and healthfulness of this food as well.
Oh, there's a different many ways to restore that. One is to really support the farmers to increase the production, really, and support them in a way that's like not trying to change their methods of farming, And what I say that is to really respect the fact that these farmers have a system of rotation. For instance, they don't. The monoculture system is not working. Is
Right.
not working for our planet. First of all, it's causing lots of damage to our planet and to our health. But that's not the tradition. Our tradition is they would plant fonio and then they would rotate it with other beans like bambara beans, and that's great for the soil. And
Mm-hmm.
this is something that we can support it by finding markets for each of those crops that they are growing. The farmers will be motivated to keep growing these grains if they see that there's a market for fonio, but then there will be a market for the bambara beans. One example, there are many other crops that are rotated in this system. That's a way to support the farmers. There are other ways to. Fonio is like a grain that's grown very easily, and the farmers, because it's grown so easily, they just go the easy way by just throwing the seeds. After the first rain comes, the farmers just simply throw the seeds on the soil. They barely work till the soil. I mean, that's
Mm-hmm.
really low. They call them the lazy farmer's crop. That's how they call fonio, the lazy farmer's crop. But we've been at Yolele, my company, we've been working with farmers, with researchers in improving better farming practices, and that
Mm-hmm.
one of them was just to simply grow fonio in rows, and that does magic in increasing the productivity of the farm. So the production of fonio can be increased drastically by simply switching to these different methods of like farming. Instead of throwing the seeds, just planting it in rows. So that's one of the things we need to support. We need to have like a way to support a network of farmers, and that can be done through different ways, through NGOs, which is what we're doing right now, and with cooperatives, working with different cooperatives. And on your side, on the consumer side, is just to really support it and spread the word on fonio and consume it. And that's great for you, because diversifying our diet is key. We have to really
Excellent.
just get out of this, these limited number of crops that we are eating, because big agri is imposing it upon us, and we just we are victims of it, because we our health is suffering from it, our planet environment is suffering from it. So supporting crops like fonio and supporting those farmers and supporting their traditional method of farming, just helping them modernize it, and that's really what we need to do, and help modernizing the processing of fonio too. Because fonio, the challenge of fonio is in the processing. It's a tiny
Mm-hmm.
grain, as you know. It looks like couscous or like sand,
Mm-hmm.
and each seed of fonio needs to be dehulled, because the skin is inedible. So that process is very tedious, and traditionally it was done manually, and manually it can take 1 hour to process 1 kilo of fonio. So
Wow.
it's labor intensive. So supporting the processing, there's now mechanization that can even make it much faster. 1 hour do 100 kilo, and our goal is to even get to 3 tons per week. So it's like really change the whole, really the processing, and make it so that farmers won't have to worry about processing in such intense and labor intensive way.
Sure.
And they have plenty of land, especially the Sahel region, which is south of the Sahara, where fonio grows. That Sahel region is threatened by desertification. The desert is advancing, so all that land
Sure.
is there is unused. But if the farmers know that there's a market for fonio, they use the land. And what's happening when they use the land? Not only they increase the production of fonio, they don't have to focus about the processing, because the processing is modernized now, and by doing that, they also slow down desertification, because what
Yeah.
fonio has deep roots. The plant of fonio has deep roots, and that network of roots retain the water and really enriches the soil, adding the nutrients to the soil. So it really restores the topsoil
Uh-huh.
of like the Sahel. So it's really slowed down with desertification, and that's an interesting process. It's really this one grain is a solution to slowing down desertification, to mitigating climate change, and that could be done with that same method, traditional method of agriculture, agro silvopastoral agriculture, which is like growing the grain and grazing their cattle and even having
Absolutely.
trees. So that's really what we can do
Yeah.
to support.
Yeah, fonio, like so many other indigenous and traditional crops, they're win-win-wins. They provide more money for the farmers, they provide better nutrition, and they protect the environment. So it's such an interesting. It's such a. It's one of the things I appreciate about your company, Yolole, and how you look at working with farmers. You're not sort of just extracting from them. You're not just saying, you're really working with them to improve production, to connect them to researchers, to really understand, how to improve yields, but to do it in a sustainable way, to do it in a very participatory way. I think that's so important because so many other crops that become popular in the global north, that come from the global south, there's a lot of farmers are often taken advantage of, and we first saw that when quinoa became popular.
Yeah.
And so I wonder how sort of prevent that quinoa problem from sort of happening with fonio.
Yeah, that's a good question. Quinoa was definitely a case study that we took into consideration when we launched Yolele, because we want it to be about the farmers. The farmers have to be the ultimate beneficiaries, otherwise we just miss the point and it doesn't become sustainable anymore. And we are a different approach to it. One of them is to make sure there's no boom for fonio that will be followed up by a bust, and that's what happened with
Sure.
quinoa. And then the price goes all over the place, and the farmers are the ones who are taken advantage of. And then next thing you know, they will be growing fonio like quinoa in Texas or in Montana, and so
Right.
so so we try to do that by just I just said, working with the farmers, working with researchers, and growing the production with the demand. Instead of like it has to be connected, there has to be like a direct connection between production and uh, market demand. Other things we are doing is because there's some political aspects of it too. We are working with like groups in West Africa, like ECOWAS or even FAO, to protect fonio itself,
Mm-hmm.
to protect the seed from like being taken into different regions of the world, just except of course for research, and also to protect even the name of fonio. We want the name of
Mm-hmm.
fonio to be for the farmers of the Sahel region who have been growing it for 5,000 years. So, if a big agri gets a hold of fonio and wants to grow it somewhere else, they cannot call it fonio. So all those things are the ways we are trying to fight to protect to avoid the quinoa effect with fonio.
Absolutely. So smart. It was you really learned a lot, I think, from quinoa, but it's also such a I think it speaks to your relationship with not only Senegal and sub-Saharan Africa, but your relationship to these farmers. You believe in them, you want them to thrive. And again, you're not looking at Yolole as a company that's extractive. It's more about, working together. I want you to talk though about the process of getting fonio into the sort of U.S. market and getting it into grocery stores like Whole Foods. That was a very long process in a lot of ways, wasn't it?
So long. It was really long. And again, like I said, I was very naive when I started thinking I can take fonio and make it a world class crop. Didn't realize that there was a whole chain of value that really meant serious. Lots of work, not least of them was to enter Whole Foods and enter this market here. But we've been really fortunate. My partner and I, Phil Tevro, we connected with Woodland Foods. Woodland Foods was like became our partner in this fonio venture. Early on, we took executives of Woodland Foods, we took them on a trip to Senegal, to the south region of Senegal called Kédougou, which is a part of Senegal you may not even have heard of. It's very
No.
remote, very remote. It's at the border with Guinea and Mali, but
Okay.
it's Fonyo Kingdom. They cherish Fonyo. It has so much cultural importance there. That's the grain that they would serve to guests of honors. When you come, they serve you a plate of Fonyo to tell you how much they honor you, and that's part of Senegalese tradition, as you know. Inviting people to share their food is like
So
something that
much
we.
food.
Oh, so much food. So much food. No, it's so much part of our culture. It's probably the highest value in Senegalese culture. That's what we call teranga, which is the name of my restaurant. That's just sharing your food is the best way for you to receive blessings from that person. We believe that the guest, particularly the unexpected guest, is someone who's bringing blessings to you. So you share your food with that person. And that's what we did with the executives from Woodland when we arrived in Kedugu. They shared some fonio with us, and they shared so much love with us. And we also saw, particularly the Woodland executives, they saw how poor that community was, and they wanted to also be part of the solution. But we realized that it had to be, a whole chain of value to work from. And so we arrived in New York and we returned in America, and they're based in Chicago. And we approached Whole Foods. We're like, okay, we have this product, and this product is coming with a mission. And Whole Foods were opening a store in Harlem at the time, and they decided to try the Harlem store. And that's how we started with the first store, Harlem. And it did great. Harlem has a West African community, immigrants community, so that helped. But it did great, and we started sending fonio in different Whole Foods around New York City with the collaboration of like our ambassadors, which are students from different university, African students from different universities in New York City, NYU and Columbia in particular, and they would go to Whole Foods and do tastings of fonio to the customers. And that's how gradually we started to introduce fonio to Whole Foods. And in each for Whole Foods would enter, fonio would be really the star in its category. We were becoming champions, and Whole Foods insisted that we had to go national, and now we are national, and we're selling it all the Whole Foods in America, and that's a beautiful story. And now we're even expanding to new products, new fonio related products, using ingredients that are also resilient from Africa, and using also traditional recipes that are inspiring. So now you can have fonio pilafs with like the flavors of West Africa, and you can just cook it in your house in 5 minutes, because fonio cooks in 5 minutes. That's another thing I forgot to mention. It's like it cooks really fast.
So it's a win-win-win-win. It's quick, it's convenient, it's delicious. There are all these things about it that folks will like. I want to go back to an earlier point you made. With COVID-19, obviously, we've seen folks with diet-related diseases being more affected by COVID, whether you have hypertension or heart disease. This is one of those superfoods, fonio, that is, protective in so many ways. And I wonder if you've seen an uptick in sales because of the pandemic, or are you getting more interest in it because it has that sort of superfood quality to it?
Yes, absolutely. And in addition to the diseases that you mentioned, there's another one that's very much connected to COVID, was diabetes. People with diabetes have been also much affected by COVID-19. And fonio in Senegal is the grain that doctors recommend for people with diabetes, because it has a low glycemic. It scores low on the glycemic index, and yes, it's a superfood, and yes, we have seen a great increase of sales in the retail market. Unfortunately, the food service has been affected by COVID-19, so restaurants have been buying less fonio because restaurants have been closed. But in general, everything is positive. And on retail and online, our fonio has been selling. People are buying it for the nutritious aspect of it and the healing aspect of it. And of course, once they get it, they also like it, the delicate flavor of fonio, so that they return.
That's great. That's great. What do you want? I mean, I think the story of Fonio is so important, and so I'm wondering how you share the story. This is such a it's as you said probably the oldest cultivated crop in sub-Saharan Africa or the world. It's one of those crops that has such a rich cultural history. It's so connected to the land. It has all of these different aspects that we already talked about. How do you share that story with the folks who you want to eat it?
With the folks who I want to eat it, I have
Yeah.
different ways. At Yolele, we are about to even launch our new website that has really plenty of information on the fonio itself and the journey of fonio. I just published a new cookbook, and it's the fonio cookbook, and I just don't know if you can see it in the background behind me. You can.
Nice.
Okay, and so it's the journey of fonio. It's really like the book that tells you. I worked on it with an amazing photographer. His name is Adam Bartos, and we traveled to Sédhiou, which is a region also south of Senegal, and we spent time with the women that are growing fonio, because it's mostly a woman work too. That's which is
Right.
fascinating. So we spent time with those women and we documented it, and from the agriculture and the harvesting. It's so beautiful because the harvesting is also part of. It's very very colorful. You see the women in the background singing to cheer the guys who are just cutting it by hand, and then the processing, and then the cooking. And the cookbook has traditional as well as imagined recipes, because also one aspect of fonio I forgot to mention is its versatility.
Mm.
It has this neutral and nutty flavor, slightly nutty flavor, that makes it very adaptable to so many different recipes. It can be an easy substitute to different grains. So in that book I talk a lot about that, and I also I do lectures. I go around and I do events like this one here. That's
Right.
different
Right.
different ways to talk about it. Yeah.
That's great. So, folks, before I ask the last question, they can go to Yolele Foods. That's YOLE, sorry, LELE foods.com. And they can learn more about Fonio there. And you said you're relaunching your new website. They can also purchase the Fonio cookbook. Hopefully, they'll order it from their favorite independent bookstore. And we'll also have links to it on our website. Chef Pierre, we're putting out a book list for the summer. We do this every season, so I'll make sure that it's also included in there and folks know how to
Thank you.
buy it, because I think that journey of fonio you described is so important. So my last question, and I've been asking all of our guests, our live cast and podcast guests, is this is a hard time, especially for restaurateurs and entrepreneurs like yourself who are involved in food. And, restaurants have closed, we're facing a lot of injustice, we're facing a lot of uncertainty. I'm wondering who's inspiring you the most right now, who has sort of kept you going during this time?
Well, that's a very, very good question. I'm being going through. It's been really difficult, first of all, for us, especially for the restaurant. Like I said, the fonio has been going fine, and the restaurant, we had to stay open, and that wasn't easy. And we managed to stay open, doing deliveries. And what happened is, once we started doing the deliveries, we realized that we could be more than just this restaurant that we used to be. We can be about the community, which was really what was the vision behind it, and the vision behind
Right.
Yolele. And the community, it turns out to be, we had hospitals right next to us, and we started to work with those hospitals, with the first responders, and the reaction was amazing. We
Oh,
had support from that, and then we realized the restaurant is located in Harlem, and there are Harlem schools, kids in shelters in Harlem, that some of them relied on being in school to have their food, and now they're like stuck. The schools are closed, and the food that they have access to, even the food that they would have access to in school, was not the best nutritional aspect. It wasn't the greatest food. So
right.
we we got involved with that too, and we collaborated with an amazing organization called Harlem Grown that really focuses on children
We
and
love them. We love Tony Hillary. We love
Tony
Harlem
Hillary.
Grown. Yes,
They're
yes.
amazing. They're amazing, and that's really, yes. It's just a long way to answer your question. They have been inspiring us. It's been really inspiring, and finding this new aspect of our mission is to just really be part of the solution, and the answer is to bring these amazing ingredients to this community at large. And that's a community that's been deprived of,
Yeah.
of good food. They call them food desert. In this particular moment with
Yeah.
the context we're living in, I even call it food apartheid. Because it's like really focusing on people of color who don't have access to food, to good
Absolutely.
nutrition. And sadly, it's nutrition that's coming from their places of origin, their ancestral grounds,
Right.
food. So this is like a cycle that we finding being part of a cycle, or reconnecting that missing link.
That's wonderful. I mean, I think that sort of you're coming back to your roots. You're reconnecting with the community during a time of real uncertainty. It's really, really inspiring, Chef Pierre. And again, the work that Harlem Grown does, the work that you're doing to support them, that's just phenomenal. And it's a new model for how restaurants can be during this time, and maybe even moving forward, really reconnecting and connecting to those communities where they're established. I think is really important. You've been such a pleasure to talk to. I'm so excited to read your cookbook and eat more fonio. A reminder that this episode will also appear on our podcast, Food Talk with Danny Nierenberg, and I hope folks will join me for our next episode when I will be talking to Carlotta Mast from the New Hope Network. Chef Pierre, please stay well, keep up all the great work, and I hope to see you again in person soon.
Thank you, and I hope so too. It was great talking to you.
Stay well. Thank you.
And you.